Hi everyone. We're Mitko, Kons, and Tanya, and we are 11-bit Studios. As mentioned, I'm a design director on the mysterious Project 8, not announced yet by 11-bit Studios, and I work with Konstantin on the same project. Now, obviously we have to address the first question. Is an 11-bit Studios a Polish studio, and why are there 3 Bulgarians talking to us today? Actually, the last several times when 11-bit Studios visited the Sofia Game Jam, it was actually people from Poland. However, the reason we're having this presentation today very much is supposed to answer the question why this time around we have 3 Bulgarians. Actually, a year ago, I joined and I was the only Bulgarian, and within just a year, there's 4 of us now. Katya on the front row here is our newest recruit. But yes, we are very much growing in the remote working area. Now, we have to address an elephant in the room, which is why we're talking about this now at the first game jam after they got renewed. Well, the reason there weren't game jams is the same reason why we get to talk about this. If you thought we were going to get to go a day without talking about COVID, sorry. It's because of COVID. COVID stopped the world for a while, but then the world needed to figure out how to keep going, so it did. And a lot of things that used to be taboo before, such as remotely working in the games industry, became possible. So about 3 years ago, very, very few studios actually were open to doing something like this. Moon Studios, famously, the Ori people used to do that from way back. But by and large, this was a no-no. There were security concerns. There were concerns about what kind of solutions we're going to use to stream this amount of data remotely because people are working on like raw engine data. But somehow we figured it out when we had no choice. So we're here doing this talk basically because of COVID. Now, to actually tell you about who you need to be in order to work remotely in the industry, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya.
Thank you, Mitko. So, welcome everybody. You're probably wondering who can work remotely. And the short answer is everybody. Don't be afraid if you don't have any experience. Doesn't matter if you're a junior or a senior or a more experienced person in our industry. This doesn't matter. From our personal experience, the thing that we can say for sure is that if you have any experience in the industry, it would be a little bit more easier for you because you would know what to expect. But don't be afraid. Go for it. The market is open, and the game dev is waiting for you. One more thing that is probably an excuse for you if you're not experienced is that what type of softwares are used for engines and so on. This is just an excuse. These are just tools, and you're going to get used with them if you want to. So, doesn't matter, again, who are you and what is your experience, you can work remotely. The next question that is probably bothering you, where you should start working. You could work everywhere in this planet Earth. There are 2 main things that you should keep in mind. The first thing is the time zone, because the time difference is something that will bother your work-life balance. So from our experience, we could say that time differences with 2 or 3 hours in difference are fine. They're totally okay because you're not working during the nights, you're not getting up that much earlier. But if this is your thing, that you prefer to work during the nights, go for it. It's, again, totally up to you. The second thing is that you should mind the currency that you're going to pay it in. Mind the conversion rates and exchange taxes. This is something super important. So when you're applying or you're going to start to work remotely, ask for it. If you're not okay with it, try to change it if there is a possibility. So keep it in mind. And yeah. The next words would be from Kons.
Hello, everybody. So as with everything, there are some pros and cons about working remotely. So some of the pros. Yes, you can work in your pajamas. This is the obvious one. So you do not travel, you do not commute to work. You can have better focus and increase productivity because of that. And by working remotely, you will get the opportunity to work on different projects, and for different companies, which might not have an office necessarily in your city or even in your country, like in our case. Of course, there can be some distractions at home. This reminds me of a story. I was working on something, can't remember exactly what, and then my daughter came into the room. I didn't close the room properly, and she was like, "Daddy, Daddy," and for a split second, she just completely turned off my PC. So everything was gone. My colleagues wondered what happened, and like once I was online 10 minutes later, I was like, explained what happened, and we all had a good laugh. So be mindful, there are distractions at home. This can lead to also less face time with people in the company, so you might feel disconnected from them, who is working on what. You will not form like good relationships in the way that if you were in the office. So, of course, basically to mitigate the cons, I would suggest that, if possible, to visit the studios. So ask around when you're working remotely, how is the company handling that? Like, do they have an office? Like Mitko mentioned, Moon Studios. So, for example, they don't have an office, but can you maybe get together once or twice a year, the whole team? Because getting together, this year we were several times in Poland, and this helps to talk with many different people, form relationships, bond, more FaceTime. So when you're working remotely, you know these people, and it's like, yo, what's up? Can we talk about this? Yes, sure. Send me this, and it feels more natural. And also, my personal experience. Last time we went, we had a nice party with our newest recruit, Katya, at the back. So this can be a very positive experience, and definitely mitigated a lot of the cons that I mentioned, because we spent some time there, we bonded with people, and it was a highly efficient time for work.
Okay. Now that we got the pros, cons, and how to mitigate them, say you've decided to take the plunge and decided that this is something you might want to try. There are a few tips about a few things you should keep in mind and a few questions you should ask. I would roughly separate them in the legal stuff bucket and the technical stuff bucket. Things in the legal stuff bucket include such things as how exactly you're going to get employed remotely. Is it going to be contract of employment, or is it going to be B2B or business to business? So you and the company employing you actually you're a contractor for them. If you're working for a studio that's in another country, then chances are very high it's going to be B2B. If you're simply in another city, then contract of employment is an option. If you do go with the B2B option, you also need to figure out how it's going to work. You need to register in some way that you are able to contract with another entity in a different country. There's two main options. Basically, you either found a company of your own or you register as a freelancer. There are pros and cons to those options as well. We're not going to get into them now. You're going to talk to an accountant if you decide this is something for you, and you're going to get everything laid out. And there's also the figuring out the taxes stuff. So once you start contracting, you no longer have the benefit of somebody else, your employer, handling your taxes, basically, which is something you might be used to. Like, you don't bother about these things. If you start working for yourself, whether as a freelancer or in your own company, you need to worry about your taxes, but again, get an accountant. The other thing that taxes are important for is because you're going to negotiate a number, basically, that you're going to get paid, keep in mind that this is the number before taxes. So unlike when you start a new job, when they're going to tell you this is how much you're going to get and how much you're going to have to spend, you're still going to have an amount of money that's going to come into your bank account. However, you're going to need to pay some taxes and stuff. Again, talk to an accountant, figure this stuff out. On the technical side, there's also a few things to keep in mind. First of all, if you work at an office, the office is very likely taking care of the power and the internet. You probably have powerful UPSs making sure that nobody's machines just shut off immediately when the power goes out, and you have fast internet available. If you don't work at an office, this is something you're going to have to provide for yourself. Fast internet specifically is something you should look into, like fiber optic or what's an option for you, because you are going to need high internet speeds in order to be able to stream aforementioned high volumes of raw engine data. You also need to get a good headset, because a lot, and I mean a lot of time is going to be spent in front of the camera talking to people. A lot of time is going to be spent in meetings, and so you need good camera and headset to help you with those. Now, you should also ask about the particular remote solution that the company you want to work with employs. This means hardware and software. Hardware purely means, are you going to be using your own machine with just a software solution that they provide? Are they going to send you a desktop computer? Are you going to get a laptop? Are you going to get a terminal that allows you to securely access the remote network? Basically, what is the hardware thing? Mostly because there's a big difference between, are they going to give you a laptop which you can use anywhere, or are they going to give you a big desktop PC which you have to figure out where to put? On the software end of things, we've been at it for about 2 years now, so most places have figured it out. But if somebody tells you they're going to be using remote desktop, run. This is not a legitimate solution for this kind of work. And if somebody still thinks they can use it, this means they have not done this pipeline yet. They do not know what works and what doesn't. There are plenty of solutions that work, Citrix, Remo, Splashtop, Parsec, a whole bunch of them, and all of them are fine. Just remote desktop is not one of them. And finally, where are you going to work? So if you have a space at home, like you have an office, like Kons does, for example, then it's easy. You have a desktop there or a laptop or something. If not, and you're going to be working out of your living room, then figure out that you have a place to do it. Maybe you have to rent an office, and this is also fine. If you're going to be working from a cafe like Starbucks type place, keep in mind that our industry is handling sensitive information subject to NDA. So it's on you to basically figure out how to make sure you're protecting the information while working at a public place. Now, with all those things, I think it might be cool for us all to just share what does a day in our life working remotely look like. And I'll start. So if I have to summarize my day working remotely, I can do it in 3 words. And they are meetings, meetings, and meetings. A lot of them. So I have to meet with designers and talk about designs. I have to meet with producers and talk about the project timeline, how the sprint is going, our roadmap, all of this. I have to meet with the creative director on the project to talk about narrative or how we want to tweak something in the game to make it better. And something that actually helps a lot with this, and going back to one of the cons that Kons mentioned, about the lack of FaceTime, in order to make up for this, because I can't actually catch somebody down the corridor and be like, hey, something I want to share with you real quick, I have to specifically schedule those times that I'm going to be talking to the people I work with most closely. So I have a daily slot saved for talks with the creative director. Every day in the morning, I know I get to talk with him. Sometimes it's a 10-minute call, sometimes it's an hour, but I know I have this slot, and if there is something very important to discuss, and for some reason I can't catch him in the moment, I know that the next day I can catch him because we have this slot. With the lead game designer, I have meetings 3 times a week, again, so that we can discuss how the design team is doing, how the designs are going, all of this, but I know I have these times set aside. So you're going to have to make an effort, basically, to make sure that you can get to keep in touch with the people you need to keep in touch with. I also, when we're at such a point in the milestone, play the build daily. This is also something that's peculiar. I've discovered, for example, that I can play it much more problem-free in the mornings, whether this is because of traffic that happens at the studio later during the day or something, but I've discovered that for myself, I do best if I do this in the morning, and this is also something something basically peculiar to remote work, that you have to figure out what times of the day your internet is going to work best for heavy work, such as streaming the engine. How about you, Tanya? What does your day look like?
The quest design is something super unique as a discipline in our studio. So I have to be really good self-organized and maintain my days because I have to communicate with many teams, like the level designers, on the other hand, with the programmers, with the game designers, with directors. Apart from this, I'm writing many documentations. I have many technical work in the engines, so I'm trying to split my days in teams. Like, for example, today's I'm going to have more meetings and write documentations, and probably the day after that I will do some engine work. So that way I'm a little bit more focused on my tasks and I deliver better my things. So this is my tip for my everyday work. Just organize your stuff and put them in thematics, so you're going to be better in delivering. And Kons, how about you?
Well, also lots of meetings, you know. But except for meetings, what is very important, at least in my case, is to play my features. So sit down, play through them, and usually I try to grab some people, not like Mitko scheduling time, but just to ask, is anybody free? So we can play together and we can give each other feedback. Last week I had such case when we were working on a thing with one of our level designers, and I was just like, hey, do you have time? And he was like, give me 5 minutes. And then we jumped in and we played for, I think, hour and something. So something that is very important also is to play the things that you work on. And of course, like Mitko and Tanya said, I also write documentation, schedule meetings, and talk to other people, which includes a lot of effort now that we are remote, but it really it's something that you can adapt to. So I think that's it.
All right, so in the end, we're not actually saying, necessarily come work for us, although we are hiring, but remote work isn't necessarily for everybody, but it might be for you. A year and a half ago, I didn't dream that I was going to be working somewhere other than on-site at a studio. He had a chance encounter with a friend of mine at the beach, actually. He was like, well, why don't you just write that recruiter back? Like, nothing's gonna happen if you just do. Something did happen, and now 4 people work there. But the point is, it's not scary, it's not strange anymore. More and more this is becoming the norm. Like Yasen, who you heard from earlier, he's one of the crew. He works in Poland as well. So this is becoming more and more something that is very widely spread and accepted. It's definitely not scary. A lot of people have gone down this road before you, so a lot of stuff has been figured out. And just don't let the fact that you live here necessarily define what you can work on, because your next adventure might be waiting somewhere else. Thank you.
Hello.
But have you noticed the industry being receptive to employees with bigger differences in time zones, say over 3 hours? I know this is not your case, but what if you say you have a colleague in Thailand or something? Is this going to work with your studio or the industry at large, I guess?
What?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yes, it's not the case at our studio. Actually, 11-bit has people working from the UK, Spain, Poland, and Bulgaria. So we're all within plus minus 2, basically.
Yeah.
I personally know people who work for a Canadian studio, for example. So I know of people who work with a studio that's major time difference. And again, as Tanya pointed out, if it works for everybody, it's not really an issue. It's just an issue, for example, if, your friends are going out and you're like, sure, I have a call at 9, so I need to come out a bit later, but it's you do you. For our case specifically, I know we want people to be mostly in our core hours because actually 11-bit only has the one seat in Warsaw, so it's not like we're distributed much. And for us to be able to work together efficiently, it's good that at least the core hours are shared. But I know for sure that there are a lot of studios that are much more flexible and they allow for much bigger time differences.
Yeah, so it's still mostly employees accommodating to studio hours as opposed to studios accommodating to employee hours depending on the person's time. Or it's just different from studio to studio, I
For
guess.
us it is. I don't know for that.
It depends. As Mitko said, with our company, I have friends that work in other companies, and what I hear is that you need to talk with the company and figure it out.
Right.
Because sometimes they're fine if there is like some overlap. So if you work, let's say, East Coast US, so maybe when it's evening here, it's their morning. So maybe you have like 2 or 3 hours overlap and you can talk. Or like if it's in, I don't know, in Australia, maybe it will be a little bit more problematic. But if that happens, I would suggest talk. I mean, it's possible to have a solution to that. I guess it will be harder with meetings, so it will be mostly like chats and emails, but I can see this work. I've heard about people that do it, but I have no idea.
It's pretty amazing that even this is possible, so yeah.
Probably the most important thing here is when you're applying to ask for the core hours, the working hours,
Right.
and if there are some hours for meetings dedicated especially for this, like if you have more than 2, 3, or 5 hours in the working hours. So this is the thing. Talk with your company, talk with your colleagues. You will find a way.
Questions? So first of all, I wanted to ask for a bit of context. What part of the company is working remotely, like percentage-wise, and what part is based in the Poland office? Roughly.
Roughly, it's a very small percentage that's working remotely of the company. Okay, so 11-bit is about 250 people as of now. The other 2 projects, which are Frostpunk and the Altars, they are, I'm pretty sure, mostly local. It's Project 8 that actually opened the doors for 11-bit to branch out with remote work. The amount of people who are working remotely out of Project 8 is much higher, so I'd say it's probably it's more than 10%, it's about 15% is remote in that project, and almost the entire design team is actually remote. It's mostly artists and programmers who are working on site, and the design team is very distributed.
Okay, and my second question is, sometimes, maybe you felt that, maybe you haven't, but sometimes working from home can be very distracting, especially if the machine you're using, for example, for work is the same as you use to play games for fun. And sometimes it might be difficult to focus on work, so do you have like strategies that you employ in order to make sure that you're focusing on work rather than getting distracted by, I don't know, bookmarks that are more interesting or something like that?
My personal strategy about this is to try to diminish all the distractions. So I try to close all the tabs, and I use my own PC also for the remote work. So I try to close all the tabs, no Facebook, basically anything with notifications, like no YouTube, no nothing, and I try to focus. I don't always manage to do it, but it involves a lot of also self-discipline and be like, okay, I need to do this. And I usually try to break down my tasks. And then it's like, okay, let's do it. Okay, this. And okay, I'll take a break. Sure, let's watch a YouTube video or something. And then, but okay, I need to go back. And basically it's self-discipline and talking to yourself and trying to find, to break down the task. And it's not like, oh, I have this big task that's overwhelming, but okay, I don't know, create the template of the document, I will write my titles, what do I need to do, let's read about some stuff and start doing it. Or if you work in the engine, it's like, okay, let's have something playable, let's iterate on it, and try to. For me personally, it's about getting it rolling. Once I start working on the tasks, it's fine. There are still distractions, however. I'm not managing it 100%.
To be fair, though, we've worked at an office. It's not like nobody at an office watches, YouTube or opens Facebook, so it's not that different.
For example, I'm trying to give myself break every hour, for example. So I know that I have some dedicated time for distractions. So I'm working, and know that, oh no, don't distract yourself. You will have this time in a half an hour or something. So if you give yourself this type of pacing, it will be easier probably for you. So you will know that you have your time, your own time. Because it's super easier not only to distract yourself from work, but vice versa, like to overwork yourself. And you have to dedicate this time for yourself. So you're taking a break. This is helping you working more efficiently.
Actually, about overworking, I just want to add that, yes, sometimes in the evening, it's like, let's check this one thing. And then it's like, oh, it's too late. So it can be definitely a pitfall. So be careful.
So what sites or resources you could recommend for searching and finding a remote job in a game dev industry?
I would say the normal websites, like you can try, if you want to visit a specific studio and check their website and see if they offer remote work. The other thing I would suggest is basically when you're looking through job offers, like check if they say if it's remote. And by sites, I would say I don't know, LinkedIn. It's the only one that I've ever used. Maybe they know more, but for me, when I search on LinkedIn or somewhere else, it's like I check what the detail is, the details, and if they allow remote work, or basically looking at a specific company, their website, and it's like, okay, in the website they say it's remote, so it's okay. Maybe if you know.
I think this is actually the biggest thing. So it used to be that you look for jobs on like JobsBG or maybe the IT portal DevBG. That. But the point is very much that we are now at a point where you just should go to the website of a company that you like and look for what jobs they're offering, because chances are some of those jobs are going to be remote. And it's usually standard now that it says like on location or remote on the job when it's being advertised. But yes, basically you don't search on any one specific place, but instead you can browse the web for any company that you might like and look for them. I know, for example, because I participate in recruitment, the minute we post something, we start receiving CVs from like India, Sri Lanka, the United States, China, I think at one point, just basically everywhere. So people are just following 11-bit job postings and they respond. So yeah, just find the company that you like and look for what they're offering. Nothing is stopping you anymore, basically.
Let me give you another point of view. As Yasin mentioned before, expand your network and your contacts. You can always ask your contacts and your friends that are working in the industry if there is open positions in their company and if you like them. So it's super easier to be referred to somewhere. Everybody appreciates that. And from my personal experience, the studios are preferring probably the recommendations and the people that are already known by someone who is already working in their studio. So use your contacts, use your friends, or use the media, the social media. You can always contact recruiters and ask, okay, I'm searching for a job, help me.
And one last thing to add, as Yasin said earlier, expand your network, because if you expand and let's say you connect with us and tomorrow there is like a job offer, and we will just share it on our profiles, and you'll probably see it, and you can even message us and be like, or this can be anyone. So you can message a person and be like, hey, I saw this. Can you recommend me? Can you help me? Give me some pointers. Basically, it was part of Yasin's presentation, which is spot on.
Hello. So it seems that your team is very international, but I suppose it's still predominantly Polish, like mostly your colleagues are Polish. So I'm curious, have you encountered some kind of like cultural barriers with communicating with your colleague, both from Poland and from the other countries? More than you encounter between communicating between yourself?
I would say that the Polish people are super easy to communicate with. They're super sweet, they're super open for communication. I would say even that is easier from my point of view. It's a little bit easier to communicate with the Polish people than with the Bulgarians from time to time. There are cultural differences for sure, but I haven't encountered any issues like stoppers or blockers of our everyday work. It's you should, like in everything, you should find your way to communicate with these people. Everybody is different, so find your way to communicate with them. Doesn't matter if they're Polish, Iranian, because we have one Iranian guy in our team. We have Spanish guys, so we have many people. And if you find a way to talk with the person, doesn't matter from where they are.
Yeah, personally, I also haven't. Maybe because Polish people are a lot like us. Like, it's not like when you go in the US or somewhere where you make small talk. You know, hi, what's up? How is it going? Because like many times it's like I call them and it's like, yo, this, and the answer is that, and we just jump right into action. And of course there are some casual conversations, but this can happen naturally later. But there isn't like, I haven't felt a barrier or something. And the more you talk every day, this is why we said it's important to communicate and put efforts into that. You eventually become friends and you know each other, and I haven't encountered this.
Yes, very much. Our case is, again, probably not the most useful one because Poland is not all that different. Like, we're all Slavic people, basically, so there's a lot that we share. But we do have people, yes, from Spain, from Iran, from Finland, and haven't had issues with any of them. However, this is a very good question about studios that might be elsewhere in the world. So Japanese studios, for example, have a very particular culture that would be very different. So that would be a shock to try and work with remotely. So that might be another point in favor of trying to keep within 2 time zones, is that the people aren't all that different. But in general, if I had to guess, I'd say that any Western culture is probably more similar to us than it is different. So we're going to be able to find common ground a lot more easier than with cultures farther east. Although, again, as Tanya pointed out, we have somebody from Iran working with us, and never really felt like, oh, this is somebody from another culture, I have to be careful. No, we're talking on topic even when we go visit. It's very easy to talk to, so no.
Cool, thank you.
More questions?
Oh, tough question.
Hey, thanks for the talk. It was also many touches on quite a lot of interesting points that I've experienced myself to some extent. One question to which the answer might be subjective, is it just us like guessing what might happen, is remote work. It's here to stay. We hope so. But I've noticed something, that most of the really big studios, like the really top players at the market, are still not that open to remote. At least this is my observation. So it's mostly about the semi-big or mid-sized studios, like our studios, basically, that are becoming more open to remote. So what do you expect to change? Like, do you think that maybe in the future more of the biggest studios will be more open, or maybe another sort of change? How do you see things?
Okay, I'll start. In the end, it's all going to come down to competitive advantage. One thing that immediately changed when this thing opened is that studios, at least on the European market, can't afford not to do this because they're losing access to qualified people that might really enhance their teams. My case specifically, when I was recruited about a year ago, the point was made that 2 years ago, this would never have happened. Not for a senior creative position, that would have never been on the table. However, being in the world that we are in, they needed somebody with a specific set of skills that they couldn't find apparently on the Polish market. So they needed to reach out, and they got me, and then I helped bring in other very qualified people in the kind of stuff that we need to make our game. And basically this project would not be possible to work if it didn't open up to a remote audience. Now, if you're such a big studio that people are willing to move heaven and earth to move and work on location for you, sure, you might be able to stay on location and work this way. But if you're small or mid-size and you want to keep relevant, you're going to need to allow remote work. If for no other reason than, actually we talk about remote work, about working from a different city or from a different country, but the truth is, I'm talking to friends now who are like, yeah, I'm looking for a job, but I really want to be able to work from home or just hybrid, just pop into the office for a couple of days a week, but just work from home. This is becoming people's expectations more and more. And whether you're working on location and you're working from your home, or whether you're working 2 time zones away and from your home, not that different. So I would expect that for the most part, it's going to move in this direction, unless, again, you're somebody who can afford to just say, come work for us, that's your only way, and then people are like, sure, we're coming.
But I think that the big studios probably will also shift to that, because this will give them, as Mitko said, advantage over to people, because like if even in, you said Naughty Dog earlier, Yasen, like if Naughty Dog require a really good level designer, you might be their choice, or anyone in this room, and it can be like, okay, we can get that person remotely, we cannot bring them here because of reasons, so we can work it out. Basically, I guess they will need to weight their pros and cons and figure it out. Maybe from Bulgaria it will be like too hard for them, but maybe elsewhere in the US or somewhere else, it can be fine.
There are many companies recruiting not remotely, but if you're asking them, they are usually saying that for the right person, they will reconsider their position. So my opinion on this topic is that probably for the right experts or positions, there will be always open possibility for working remotely. Even with like more visiting the studio, like you have to travel a little bit more, but it will be a possibility if you're their person.
Yes, you also need to work hard.
Okay, last questions? No one? Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mitko, Konstantin, and Tanya from 11-Bit Studios.